you don't have to subscribe to the New York Times. It's not a civic obligation.
Yeah.
But we no longer exist in a world where there are like a lot of, you know, like there, it doesn't feel like there are practically infinite news options. And the New York Times is not going away. It's not going to like disappear into sand.
I do want to talk about this right now because it corresponds to like one of the news stories of today, which is Israel's putting a pause on the famine. I guess they're like letting in aid, and even then they're letting in aid mostly through airdrops, which is again dangerous, and it's already killing Palestinians.
It's dangerous theater. It kills as many people as it feeds, it feels like.
Yeah. And then there's also there has been this past week of condemnations coming in, too little too late. Many of those condemnations are because there's been so much like radio silence on this issue despite the severity of the crisis. It feels like there's a change of attitude here, but when I think about it, it's no different than when people were like, Mr. Netanyahu, please stop during the first Biden term, right? And these guys, I think, are just like, this is just the modus operandi, you know, where you just kind of, when it gets to a point where it's undeniable, unavoidable, unimaginable cruelty, you just turn around and you're like, oh, we're going to recognize the state of Palestine with like all of these different ridiculous qualifiers as well that correspond to Israel's goals of dominance regardless. And then that's it. You know, they turn around and they offer a little bit of aid in and then go back to the and it's,
I mean, I also, there's no like sense of like, well, what about, I mean, is like tomorrow, like speaking figuratively. I mean, just like at any point in the future, like the place is uninhabitable. Like the aid thing is the crisis du jour. It is the crisis of the moment, and it's an awful one. But like the reality is that like groundwater supply is poisoned. All of the roads unusable. No habitating structures. The like, who knows all the asbestos and other shit that's been like, you know, released into the environment. All of the fishing and all of the ocean, you know, like the waters are polluted. I mean, it's really, there's a degree to which also refocusing it on this like now immediate conversation, the pauses and all this stuff. Again, it's just like, it's more can kicking from people who have only been kicking the can since October 2023. They would rather kick the can, by the way, and they would rather like blame the people who get mad at them in their Twitter mentions than admit for even a goddamn second, for a single second, I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. I don't to like
for me, I'm gonna say something extreme here. If someone like Matty Iglesias overnight was like, "This is unconscionable. This is a genocide," I was, you know, even if he didn't say he was wrong, and then he just kept it pushing and didn't respond to people who were like, "Dude, what the? I can see your tweets from yesterday when you were saying it's awesome and good, and we should starve more children." He never responded to those guys at all, and he just almost magically overnight turned into the advocate. I obviously would not trust them, but I also wouldn't spend any time shitting on them. Okay, like I'd be like, all right, who cares? Just keep it pushing. You know, the Owen Jones method. You say, yeah, exactly. It's like at this point, like maybe I'm too pragmatic, and some people might get mad at that, but I just don't care what people have said in the past. I just want this to come to an end. And I realize that, like, I mean, the media figures and the politicians, but like, especially for the average people, regardless of their lack of interest in saying anything until it was like no longer damaging to their careers or whatever, I just want, I want enough pressure to mount so that the situation changes, you know? And this, on the other hand, is not an example of this because like, this is a cynical attempt.
Exactly.
This is a cynical attempt from Ross Douthat, who does not actually think that the war is unjust. It's just the title of it says it is.
And also in Iglesias's case, like he's a troll. He's not like his ideological convictions, whatever they are like not particularly bound to like a set of recognizable or coherent ethics that like the rest of like us normal people have to do. They're like largely driven by like whoever he has animosity towards on social media.
Also, Ross Douthat just looks like Temu Sebastian Gorka. I realized
he reminds me of like he's like Hugo Drax from Moonraker, the Bond villain.
Israel's war in Gaza is a war for a just cause. The elimination of a cruel, fanatical, itself potentially genocidal terror organization that oppresses its own people, holds innocent hostages, and will pose a severe danger to the state of Israel for so long as it holds power. I want to see the comments on this. You write of war and justice, of strategy and restraint, but where are the children in your calculus? Not a new approach at all. British naval blockade of the First World War. It is hard to imagine that Hamas represents a threat to the enormously powerful nuclear arm. Even the New York Times, like squishy liberals, are not taking this propaganda and believing in it. Like, I read the Brett Stevens comments. They ballistered him. They were eviscerating him.
But the thing to understand about the New York Times, and this is an important thing to understand about the New York Times, is that the people like who run that institution, like I'm not talking about like individual reporters. I'm not talking about like mid-level people who do whatever, even individual writers and stuff. Like I'm talking about like an institutional attitude and a cultural expectation of how the paper has to function and what its internal culture should be that is set by the top. You know, it is sort of known and has been for years as like an editor-run paper in that way. And like what they don't care about like that this is like what the readers say about this subject. Like for them, this is not like an issue where like the riffraff matters. They have the New York Times has its own like a high-minded, independently acquired view of the situation that like is not going to bend to like whatever the rabble is saying. Now, it's like a kind of a crazy and ridiculous position to take when you consider just how much their opinion page like seems to aggravate their readership. But, you know, from their perspective, people still click on those articles. And moreover, like the people who run the paper like seeing this stuff. They reward it. They don't care that this is not how it like that this is not like what people seem to like. The people don't feel that this is a moral authority that is speaking to them and is representing something out in the world that they want to be put out in there. Like they see their writers doing that. And the more and more that people like kick and fuss about it, the more they see themselves as speaking truth to the power of the mob. And you're just not like,
I mean, yeah, this is a way. It's a failure in some ways. It's no different than Benjamin Netanyahu thinking he can go on the Nelk Boys podcast and then like somehow get some benefits out of that to like restore Israel's image in like a specific demographic. It's an abject failure. These guys are basically eroding what remains of their already limited credibility. Every single time they just like scream into the void about how everyone else is wrong and you have to listen to us. And it's not and it's actually a just war, but it's like kind of become unjust or whatever.
There's another thing though in which it's like
it's wish casting.
But this issue, and especially Palestine, is like a very critical Jenga brick for like their whole understanding of everything. Because like if you accept that this was like from day one, and if you accept that like this was the moment October 7th that like when the dust had like settled for a minute after the Hamas attack, then and the devastating military blow that was dealt to Israel, then like what that means is that you're not just accepting that like that, you know, was this like fated thing that you missed. It means that all the kids on the college campuses were right. It means that all of the blue hairs were totally correct.
Yeah.
It means that like your annoying kids who've been screaming at you this whole time are 1,000,000% right. And that the people saying to Israel on Twitter were closer to like sincere and real moral gravity and understanding where it is than, you know, the smartest people gathered around a table in a conference room on some floor of the New York Times building. Like that is like if you accept that about this situation, I mean, that's part of Ross's issue too. Like, what does it say about you as somebody able to divine ethics and as somebody able to like discern what is like the correct moral situation out in the world when like you blew it this badly? The Iraq War was the same way, by the way.
Yeah,
like tons of
the same people that got the Iraq War wrong are the same people that are getting this Israel stuff wrong. But given the way that the internet works and given the way that like social media has like basically made it so that people's attention spans are much shorter, we get to see this kind of stuff work itself out in a much faster pace than ever before.
Absolutely.
So now you get to see it within the confines of a year without the conflict coming to a close, and you get to see it in real time. You get the attitude shift in real time, and you get the reaction to people who are unable to read the room appropriately, because ultimately these guys are like, to varying degrees, they're still trying to maintain some semblance of credibility as well. Like, they have to do that. Otherwise, next time they write an article, no one's going to trust them, because they're going to be like, oh, remember when you said this wasn't a genocide? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there is that too, for sure. That's precisely the reason why I think, like, in a sea of obfuscations, in a sea of like buried leads, the New York Times will still every now and then, like with its visual investigations team or whatever, offer credible reporting to what's going on in Gaza, specifically so that, like, next time around there is still some semblance of credibility when they have to lie at the behest of Israel.
I will say, comparable to your position about like the idea of like not like going overboard on people who do end up coming around, or who are willing to like start to speak honestly about what's going on. I also think that people, particularly Americans, like, you don't have to subscribe to the New York Times. It's not a civic obligation.
Yeah.
But we no longer exist in a world where there are like a lot of, it doesn't feel like there are practically infinite news options. And the New York Times is not going away. It's not going to like disappear into sand. In fact, like, the New York Times is a very effective media monopolist. There aren't any newspapers that even like touch it in a meaningful way, and that also, are read by leaders of foreign governments. Like, if you and leaders in foreign governments that if they pay attention to what goes on in the New York Times and they take it seriously, and there is something to like understanding that like institutions like the New York Times have got to be like if we accept that they are like, this like powerful agenda sending, hell, even monolithic force in American media and in news media, and that as such, they provide us with information that we need to know in order to be able to function cogently in the world. To me, it does feel like a lot of what people have to demand of the New York Times is like not, I think it's totally legitimate and understand about people voting with like canceling subscriptions. I don't myself subscribe to the paper, but like, I do believe that there is something that's got to be demanded in terms of like, well, what about like actually trying to, in the same way that like it's about like demanding that the BBC like do its job, like be honest, do better, let the reporters who are there who do see things on the ground speak openly. Also, don't assign dunderheads with like clear biases against Arab and Muslim life to cover these issues that are so sensitive. There are real, there is like a meaningful reformist critique, let's say, of the New York Times that I think people should be like pretty loudly demanding. And that instead that like, understandably, and in a way that I very much sympathize with, there is largely like a frustration with like the paper existing at all. The idea that there is just like this, institution out there that is private and seemingly, totally unaccountable to the public, that seems to set the agenda for so much.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I don't think it does. I think in this day and age, I don't think the New York Times is setting the agenda necessarily. I will say this from my own personal anecdotes, from my own personal experience. When I meet with like famous directors, for example, or people that want me to participate in their projects, whether it's a documentary or movie or something, they have only encountered me as a media figure from the New York Times coverage on me, right? And I won't reveal any names, but like I was recently talking to a very famous director after participating in one of their projects, and they were basically saying like, what I saw in that room when I was interviewing you is entirely different than how the New York Times has presented you. The New York, like I was angry at the way. That
what's
the New York Times
what's the thing about Muslims hiding their opinions? What's it?
Oh yeah, I was doing taqiyya.
Yeah, he was doing taqiyya. Yeah, that was it.
I should have told him.
He was actually just what he's doing right now is that he's bragging about how good he is. At it.
Yeah. But they basically were like, why? Like, why? Doesn't that piss you off? And I was like, listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I call all of those media hits, my terrorism insurance. Like, because there are plenty of right-wing papers, plenty of Hasbara outlets that are actively working in real time to make it seem as though I'm like this dangerous figure, this radical terrorist, whatever right. So anytime I get any mention whatsoever in the New York Times or in Times 100 or whatever, that like makes those other right-wing papers look ridiculous, look silly in comparison. But the reality is, those are the people that read the New York Times, right? The directors and the marketing managers and all these executives, like they are the people that, I guess, quote unquote, set the agenda for people of above a certain age. But yeah, anyway, the point I was making is like the director was like, aren't you mad that they just like present you as just like a hot guy and not like your opinions at all? Because it's very clear after talking to you for like 2 hours, it's your opinions and your commentary that has.
Hasan actually was just arguing with her. It's like, no, I'm not hot.
Well, my point is like, it was not. It was obvious to them after I had a conversation with them, like that it was my perspective that had caused me to develop an audience, which is the truth, and they never actually talk about that at all. You're a clown. Thank you. Wow, New York Times is garbage. But they were even, they were even shocked or surprised about the fact that like none of the mainstream media reports on things like people like myself, like all the puff pieces ever actually featured like my worldview or my opinions on any number of different issues, and it's mostly just like aesthetics. I don't personally care about it necessarily. Like I don't care that they don't actually cover my perspective, because I think that my perspective would be too antagonistic to the way that they have designed the world, the way that they view the world. But that's it. That's I don't know where I was going with this. I'm losing my train of thought. How does that tie back to you saying that the New York Times doesn't hold major influence over power like they used to? Oh, that was the point I was making. Because it's not a real mover and shaker in the sense that like average people are not getting their notes from the New York Times. It's powerful people that work in different industries that are still reading the New York Times, but it doesn't translate to like a broader audience, like an appeal to a broader audience. Do you see what I mean? Like people like yourself, like Amazon delivery drivers aren't like, oh, I wonder what Ross Douthat is saying about Israel. They see it on social media. That's it. I would say that someone like Sneeko might have more credibility in the eyes of like the average person than even Ross Douthat. Like has a much larger audience than someone like, Brett Stevens or Ross Douthat, which sounds insane to say, but I think that's the truth.
Yeah, but like I don't think like the New York Times is like, and it's a good like metric of like, it is not just like, yes, powerful people read it and influential people read it all over the world, but also like it is like the paper of record for like people, educated people in this country. And there is, to me at least, like a really like it's the elitist nature of the paper, like the fact that it is like so aggressively surrendered to like its worst instincts on like not listening to its readers, not engaging with like the mass amount of like pushback that they get on a lot of stuff, that like their attitude, they got rid of the public editor years ago. They got rid of, like they have a comment section, and that's sort of like like where they've like confined it all. But to me, there's like sort of like more than anything else, what these institutions want is to be able to like balance being able to speak to this many people and being effective at like having that broad of an audience, like, speaking to the educated masses, whatever. But also like remaining in like part of the inside game, that like when when a CEO needs to announce like a major life change or a policy, like for example, Kathleen Wild, who's this woman who's like a very big, like sort of kind of like a shadow power broker type figure in New York City. Like when it is announced that she's like planning to step down, like there's a big New York Times article about that. And like the people who run institutions like that, I think that part of like, if we're going to build a better world, is like, we've got to like agitate for like an educated elite that isn't like constantly trying to play that sort of like court whisperer role. Like that's part of why somebody like Ross Douthat ends up getting elevated, or so many people on their opinion page are elevated, expressing opinions that are just like out of sync with like not just what you can with what like you and me think, but are out of sync with like clearly what the majority of people in this country think.
You can draw a direct line also of success from the New York Times all the way to a $250 million deal for the Free Press for Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss is at the New York Times. Right. She's annoying. She's playing a role in the New York Times when she's there to like elevate these right-wing thinkers, right? Like that's what she does, constantly chirping about cancel culture while simultaneously, if you're like of Palestinian descent or think Palestinians are humans, you know, advocating to fire you from your college campus position, while simultaneously, like literally, the hypocrisy is so funny always, like for the Barry Weisses and the Ben Shapiros of the world, where they're like have made careers talking about how cancel culture is out of control, how censorship is like a leftist regime, and while also simultaneously never skipping a beat, never skipping an opportunity to destroy the careers of like anyone that speaks to the humanity of the Palestinians or anyone that says anything about Israel that is objectively true. And she went from the New York Times. She couldn't get fired so that she could launch her like.
Yeah, she tried. People may not remember this, even though it was like barely yesterday. But like she spent months trying to get fired from the New York Times so that she could make herself into a martyr. And the Times, to their like credit, like were like they clearly understood what game she was playing and did not indulge.
Or they just didn't do it because they like people like Barry Weiss.
I think that it's because like because this is like their thread is that like it's they like or like the balance beam that they're walking as they see it is that like they want to cultivate audiences or voices of people who are like right wing and speak to more than the liberal masses, because like they do believe that they are too lib, that they speak to too narrow of an audience, that they're not, that they're not seeking as much diversity of opinion enough. Like, for example, Barry Weiss, right? Like, she wasn't the editor of the opinion section. She, I think, was given the title of editor, but she was hired by a guy named James Bennett, who had previously been the editor of The Atlantic. And when Bennett came to the New York Times opinion section, the mandate that he had was, we're going to go for big tent different voices. And so that meant that they hired one left-winger, one lefty person, Elizabeth Brunig. But then everyone else, like everybody else that we can examine from that time, for the most part, I mean, I forget if he hired Tressie McMillan Cotton or whomever, but like the clear idea and the thing that they've embraced spiritually and maintained is this idea that, we're going to support a diversity of viewpoints here. But in effect,
that always is meant.
Exactly.
Always is meant like permission structure expanding on the right with like a little bit. It's, what's really funny? And something that the New York Times and like all these other, mainstream credible institutions have always like gotten mad at Joe Rogan over is that, Joe Rogan has like really crazy right wingers on without like holding them to account. And it's like, Joe Rogan does the exact same thing. He'll have like one kind of leftist guy on every now and then he'll have like every neo-Nazi on immediately afterwards. Like it's the same shit. It's no different than what the New York Times has been doing in perpetuity or any number of these.
The Times has done like and it's not just the Times in this respect, because I also will say that like the New York Times is distinct and it's big and it is unique in media because there's nothing like its size as like a news gathering organization in the US anymore. But like there are a lot of the same kinds of similar headwinds coming from like the higher ups at these institutions, like the Washington Post, for example, where, to your point, it is about like they're trying to expand the tent so largely, but so as to still maintain some kind of distinction from like the Joe Rogan riffraff of the world.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's very like, I feel that people I feel that a lot of these institutions are so obsessed with like how they appear as voices of moderation. And that's a mandate that comes from above. And some institutions are like, the Washington Post, it's gone disastrously for them on the bottom line side. Institutionally, morale's very low. And then for others like the New York Times, I think a lot of people like they may be there internally and they may be opposed to it, but like they're not saying anything because like it's the last job, they feel like they got the last chopper out of Saigon. Like they have a job that pays well, that gives them benefits, that allows them to save for kids' college and so on. and lets them live probably in the tri-state area. And it's not a, like, I mean, look, if I had one thought to express in like a real deep way, it's that like I really wish that the people working at the New York Times who have a union, you know, the News Guild, and who have like really for many years resisted letting the union have any input on editorial matters or express their thoughts. Like, I wish to God that some of them tried to, you know, collectively organize and express dissatisfaction with when their paper, you know, does things like let its news coverage become this like instrument of Israeli policy abroad.
Yeah, I think that would also unironically do more to preserve the credibility of this paper as well. Like it would allow, in a cynical way, it's kind of like whenever I talk about the Democrats during election cycles, where I'm like, even if you don't care about the depraved actions of Israel, you should still call it out on a partisan basis in an effort to garner support, in an effort to communicate like some semblance of earnesty, because that is what that's how people are viewing this issue now.
Well, that is a good point.
It's the same for the New York Times. Like, even if you are like, no, I love doing propaganda for the ethno state, it's the most important thing that I have to do. If you want some credibility banked later down the line for the next time you want to lie about something and get like power brokers to you know, agree with you, you need a crumb of credibility banked. And in order to get that, you need to separate at a certain point with this unlimited pro-Israel propaganda that you're doing.
I will also say that there is another piece of this that is like worth identifying on Israel specifically, which is that, like, you know, the Israeli like government takes extremely seriously what these organs of the press say and think and do. And they have spent many, many years developing very consistent and aggressive lines of criticism so as to lobby them, like so as to make sure that when the U.S. does, or when, you know, for example, when the New York Times does run an editorial, like, you know, years ago saying, you know, 2 states, like maybe Israel should make some more concessions, you know, pro-Israel donors will have, they will take out a banner ad on the building next to the New York Times building so that it faces the editor's desk. That's a real thing that happened. Yeah. And like,
yeah, it's like, it's the same shit they did in Hollywood, where like they would find who the like they would track the routes of people who are in the jury pool, I guess, for declaring who's like an Oscar nominee or whatever, or who might get an Oscar, and they would put the for your consideration ads on the pathway, on the roads that these people are taking, knowing full well that this will like influence their decision in some way. It sounds crazy, it sounds stupid, but like it plays that role in isolating a lot of these people who are already personally completely sheltered from the average person's opinion. It causes them to isolate even further. This isn't to say that they're victims, mind you, okay? These guys are educated enough to see exactly what you're seeing, but I think all of the decision making revolves around their own personal careers, and then when they see stuff like this as well, and all of the cocktail circuits they're going to are like, where they're surrounded by not average people that have a conscience on this, but instead people who are invested in doing propaganda for Israel. They end up having this like completely distorted view of everything that's going on. Anyway, let's take a look at the BBC, which is another horrible propagandist for the state of Israel. Israel says it will open Gaza aid corridors after international pressure. You know, there's only so much intentional child starvation murder that the public can fathom until the pressure mounts to a degree where these Western politicians have to come out and be like, this is too much. This is too much baby murder for us, dog. Remember, and I've said this since day one, Israel has realized that given how America has always operated in its wars, Israel has realized that they can get away with saying collateral murder is fine, even if it's like 10x whatever they've targeted, whoever they've targeted as like a reason for why they've blown up like an entire city block, right? 10x, 20x, 30x, 50x, collateral murder is perfectly permissible in the eyes of the rest of the Western world. But there is one thing. There's one thing that is undeniable, which is denying aid. Okay? Whenever they deny aid too much and the impact of that aid denial becomes obvious, they have to turn around and and do something. They have to move in the other direction. What is this? I saw a graph today to show the number of rapes in Europe over the last 2 years and how every country besides Poland, the only one with closed borders, has gone up to double-digit thousand, but Poland went down by 1,000. What's your take on this?
My take on this, you are racist.
Well, it's just like, it's just incredibly stupid. First of all, I have no idea where the graph you saw, but also rape statistics vary from country to country. Like countries that consider individual instances of rape, even if it's from the same perpetrator towards the same victim, like in places like Sweden, are logged as individual acts of rape, as opposed to many other countries that don't do that, right? So whenever they change something about the way that they calculate sexual violence, it seems like the statistics jump up dramatically. There is no direct correlation, even if correlation does not mean causation. There's no direct correlation with like immigration increasing and then rapes going up as a consequence of that. It's just a way for a lot of people to justify having their racist opinions be validated, to say, oh my God, like immigrants are coming in. Also, it's ironic to say Poland does not have any migration whatsoever, because where do you think the Ukrainians went? Like that if you don't consider Ukrainian refugees to also be migrants in a country, you're kind of giving the game away without realizing that you're giving the game away. Why is it that they're not considered migrants or refugees? Is that because they are white? Is that the reason why they're not considered migrants or refugees? But the only people who are fleeing violence from Middle Eastern countries and the global South are considered migrants and refugees? Is that what it is? Do you understand? Anyway, just letting you know that a lot of that information is used
Well, like if a lot of
justify the fears that people have.
Also, like if a lot of it's not a coincidence that this question's asked about Poland specifically, and then like one of the new favorite like blue check like Nazi like video content genres that they like to share now is this like. Have you ever noticed how Poland is, everybody's here having so much fun? Like, what do you notice about all these people? Do you notice anything about why they're all smiling and so happy? And it's because obviously everybody in the video is white, and that's supposed to mean something.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't know what the Polish classification of sexual violence. I would assume instantly that with what I know about the way that different countries in Europe classify sexual violence, I would suspect that they probably have a different method for tabulation, which leads to a lower number overall. I appreciate you explaining that to me. I'm ignoring your weird chatters. I seem to have strange opinions when a chatter asks a curious question about politics. It's because many people that come in with this kind of take are most likely not actually just curious, but they're simply trying to propagandize a right-wing, white nativist, reactionary position, especially by bringing up Poland to be like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah, Poland these days, because Poland is like experiencing meaningful economic growth, and by 2030, actually before 2030, will be a richer country than the United Kingdom. Like it has become like this like very aggressive stand-in for people who want to talk about like Western and white civilization in Europe,
which is ironic because Polish people in Western Europe are considered the rapist migrants. Ironically enough, like Polish migration into the UK played a major role, a formative role in Brexit. So that's why it doesn't make any fucking sense when white nationalists now use Poland as this like supposedly utopian society. Also, it's not like every rape is done by an immigrant and done to a non-immigrant. If rapes are increasing, the risk factors are still people around you, and non-immigrants are more likely to be raped by another non-immigrant. Crime is more often committed by proximity. Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. It's like the black on black violence method. This morning I read a story in Mother Jones. It was a really crazy story about like police departments that charge children for false reporting rapes that really did happen to them. And there's a documentary made about it. It's really it's like harrowing shit. And it's like, of course, the Mother Jones story was focusing on this one, like this
poor woman who as a teenager was assaulted repeatedly by her adoptive father. And
stop making excuses for gape. I hate sexual violence no matter what the race. So immigrants get a pass on grape.
Yo,
first of all, dude, you can say
stop
rape.
biting the whitest kids you know. Okay, that's that they did that sketch way better than the grapist. Okay, like don't.
No, this is like TikTok speak.
Oh yeah, I know it's unalive. I know I'm being
unalive grape. It's like, dude, you're talking about an adult topic. Okay, you want to be intentionally obtuse about what I'm saying. Okay. You can have the dignity to call it rape instead of grape, okay?
Or do what the other guy did, which is the normal thing, which is just to like use the star if you don't want it to get flagged or I don't know.
Yeah,
just doing the like the similar sounding word thing or the like newspeak unalive stuff. I can't take.
It's like, oh, so immigrants get it passed on grape? No, they don't. Okay, I'll get banned. No, you don't. No, you won't. I'm telling you. If you already got your point across here. We already understand why you said this to be intentionally obtuse. You tried to imply a thing that I did not say. You tried to imply, or not even imply. You made a statement that claims that I think immigrants get a pass on rape. I do not believe this. I've never said this. There's never been a moment where I've said this, but you want me to say this. It would be better for your position overall if that's what I was saying, or if that's what I was thinking, or if other people believe that that's what I was saying and thinking. That's the reason why you said it. Okay? And if you're going to do that, you might as well use the word rape instead of grape, okay? Use some big boy words. Anyway, having said that, that was not my point at all. That's not my position at all. There's never a point that I've ever made. And you had to fucking fantasize about a point that I didn't make because you think that this will favor your argument here. Okay?
When's this BBC segment from?
This is from 5 hours ago.
In the last hour, the Israeli military has announced a pause in fighting in 3 areas. Now, this is the scene looking into Gaza from Israel. The IDF says starting today, between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. local time, there will be a pause in military activity in Al-Mawasi, Deir al-Balah and Gaza City every day until further notice. It is to allow the safe passage of United Nations and humanitarian aid organisation convoys. Now, Egyptian TV has shown these pictures of aid trucks lining up at the border before moving off, driving towards the Gaza Strip. The Israeli move, which includes opening so-called humanitarian corridors, comes after mounting international pressure and warnings of mass starvation of Palestinians in the territory. The Israeli military says its planes also dropped 7 packages of aid into Gaza earlier this morning, containing flour, sugar and canned food. The IDF released these pictures of that, but the aid agencies say the method is inefficient, dangerous and a distraction. Israeli troops have boarded a boat that was trying to bring aid to Gaza by sea. The pro-Palestinian Freedom Flotilla coalition said the vessel...
Wait, can Israel just unilaterally stop fighting in an area without ceasefire? Yes, of course they can, because they are the perpetrators.
And they, by the way, the unilateral thing is kind of like it's like Israel can do it unilaterally because they have the power to do it. But like when they do it unilaterally, it's also not something that can be that stable or last for a long time, because like Hamas is not like if you're not negotiating with the other side, or if you're not agreeing on like a shared understanding of what it is, then like you can say that you stopped doing something, but how the f can anybody like verify that what you're doing is actually like a cessation of activity? I mean, like Israel announced, I don't know if this was the same thing, like if this is the same set of part of the same announcement that was made yesterday about how like they're not going, like they're ceasing operations or whatever, like they're lifting like a curfew or whatever it was about like in areas where they are not operating currently, which is like, you know, weasel words. Like they still allow themselves, even in this unilateral action, like enormous latitude to do whatever they want when they want it. That's the benefit of doing it unilaterally, is that you don't have to abide by any demand that, you know, somebody else made of you. You just do what you think is in your best interest at that moment. And clearly Israel has decided that getting screamed at by the entire world for a week or two on end, because now everybody realizes the starvation shit is real. You know, like they've decided like, all right, we can lay down the arms for a bit.
Yeah, we can let in like a crumb of aid beyond the intentional death traps that we've set up because people have seen too many starving dead children, like too many starving dead babies. So we just have to move on a little bit. It's gross. It's a gross calculation, but don't take my word for it. Let's hear what, where is it? Benjamin Netanyahu himself openly state this. Where is it? Hold on. I had it here somewhere. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking in Hebrew, and that's how you know this is for the Israeli public consumption and not the Western world, is explaining how he is now being forced to allow minimal humanitarian aid into Gaza. Let it be clear that we will achieve our goal and destroy Hamas, he said. Let's take a look. I'm in Mitzpeh Ramon after visiting the Ramon Air Force Base, where I thank the Air Force commander and the wonderful air and ground crews for the wonderful announcement they made in Operation NOT. We continue to fight in the Gaza Strip first and foremost. We have casualties. We also have wounded. I send condolences to the families and may the injured recover. But let it be clear, we will achieve the goal. We will eliminate Hamas. To complete this goal, both of eliminating Hamas and of freeing our hostages, we are advancing in the fighting and conducting a campaign of waiting. In any path we
sorry, that was that timing.
We're conducting a campaign of waiting. In any path we choose, in any path, we will have to continue to allow the entry of minimal humanitarian supplies. We have done this until now, but the UN is making excuses and lying, saying I'm not allowed to enter with humanitarian supplies. Granted, there are open labors, there always have been, but today it's official. There will be no more excuses. We will continue to fight, and we will continue to act until we achieve all of our war goals.
Yeah,
until we complete victory.
He's speaking to his right flank here because, like, Netanyahu's job, like, the reason Netanyahu is in power is both because he's a devious, but he's also like he represents a compromise between like the two prevailing like political factions in Israel who are not like who don't neatly correspond to specific parties or even like left or right at this point anymore, just because of how devolved and degraded the state of Israeli society is. But it's about like the people on the religious right and the settler establishment who clearly have like they want to go balls to the wall with like everything everywhere all the time, whether it's the West Bank destruction and displacement, which continues apace, or it's the complete eradication of all life in Gaza. Take your pick. And then there's another like side of this which wants to continue and, you know, as he say, escalate the campaign against Hamas and all this other stuff, but also is perhaps a bit more cognizant of the international complications that arise from an unyielding campaign of destruction against civilian infrastructure and life. And when Netanyahu is when you see him do a video like this, he's talking to one side of the faction. He's talking to one part of the tent that needs to be, you know, I mean, they don't need to be because they'll see this video and call him boged, they'll call him a traitor.
They'll call him a traitor they'll call him Hamas. They'll call him a Palestinian, like Chuck Schumer.
I mean, this is part of why though, like they do so much regional war. Like why it is that like they expand the conflict into Lebanon, or they expand the conflict into Syria, they expand the conflict, you know, in wherever they can. They bomb Iran, etc. Because like the only way to sustain the continuing, you know, like contradiction, which is that like Netanyahu is unpopular, but he's also the only political figure in Israel who can like synthesize these two, you know, these two different totalizing factions, these two different factions that have totalizing, you know, violent fantasies of how Israel can remain safe and Israel or whatever.
Yeah.
Like this is what he's got to do. One question I do have though, or at least one thing that like remains unclear to me is like, again, what I was saying earlier about like the next day stuff, like they get through this like aid starvation thing. They restart letting in trucks or whatever. And it turns out that like the starvation tactic with the genocide is not one that they can continue to do. Like what comes next? Are they just going to try? Are they going to attack Iran again? Are they going to like kick up war in Lebanon? Like what is the thing that they're going to do to like justify the continued?
There will come a day when the dust is settled and Western like when NGOs will be able to make assessments of the actual calculated human toll. And when that moment comes, it's over. Like, that is basically an atom bomb for Israel. And I think that Israeli officials recognize that. I think that the war cabinet understands, like Benjamin Netanyahu understands that.
Yes.
There's no propaganda that you can do when Western journalists enter the Strip and they showcase the full extent of the death and destruction campaign. And we look at the real numbers, not like the unimaginably conservative underestimate from a crippled healthcare system within the Palestinian health, within the Gazan health ministry, but like the actual numbers. When that happens, the actual death and destruction, when that happens, it's over. No one will, people already have dropped Israel completely. It's already a pariah all around the world. It has been a pariah in the global south forever, since its inception, because many people understand the role that Israel plays for American interests. Having said that, it's also become a pariah in the only areas around the world that Israel cares about, which is the Western world. It's not a pariah amongst the political class or maybe the media, but it is certainly a pariah amongst like regular people. So it's done. And once Western investigators can go and look directly, once Western investigators can go and look at directly the human toll here, the death toll here, the real numbers here, it's extra over. And I think they understand that, which is why they can't have a long and continued ceasefire, because people are going to start saying, okay, now we have to come inside. And
the Israeli and American answer to this problem also is to like continually emphasize the idea of like, well, the leverage we can use to get Israel to end the war is something like a regional peace. Like, we will continue to, like, Israel will stop doing this, or Israel will back off, and Israel can avoid perhaps the kind of ultimate, like, you know, let's call it fatal blowback to the state of Israel that would arise from like letting some transparency in a real way to Israel, into Gaza. Like, they're going to basically try and get like Arab governments to say everything that's happened is fine. And they're going to try, or that like Israel can be normalized and all this now. And that like that piece of leverage and getting the Gulf Arab states to underwrite the tab of reconstruction will be like the way that they settle this, because it'll have been like, no take backsies. We've already figured out like what the solution here is. Like, it doesn't matter that you guys want to send an investigator. It doesn't matter that you guys want the ICJ, you know, like indictment to be expanded. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We've created a new geopolitical reality. I'm still highly skeptical that is possible, because I don't believe that, like, as necrotic and strategically inept in many respects as a lot of these Gulf Arab states I feel are. I also think that they are conscious enough that, like, you know, if they give the keys to Al-Aqsa to like the settler movement, for example, that may be something that could be that could be part of a destabilizing force among many other factors in their own countries.
Yeah, that's it. That's the delicate tightrope that they're always on, because like they realize that their populations are unimaginably resentful for good reason towards Israel in perpetuity, but they also, the only way for them to maintain their power, their grip on power as monarchies, is through unlimited security commitments from the West. And that's the reason why they have to, behind closed doors, say like, do whatever you want to Gaza, we love Israel, whatever. But in public, they have to at least make it seem like they're defending the Palestinians, even though it's becoming clearer by the day that they have no interest whatsoever in defending the Palestinians at all. And if that were, and it gets to a certain point, like Egypt is a great example of this, where like Egypt is just, I think Egypt is a ticking time bomb. Okay, I think it's a powder keg.
It is unreal. I agree completely.
Yeah. The Egyptian population is, I suspect the Egyptian population is insanely frustrated at this point with what the Egyptian government is doing to defend Israel's interests by directly prosecuting its own citizens that want to help, right? There is very little, there's no amount of like American weapons, American money, and American support that will that will allow the Egyptian military to continue keeping the country stable.
I think a great example of how like Egypt's weird position was that deal that they cut with the UAE to like sell all that essentially like oceanfront land to get a tremendous bailout to help them meet IMF obligations. And it just sort of tells you that like countries that have as many people, that have as large of a military, and that are as geopolitically important, getting bought off like that in like such a naked way is like, that's not it's not a harbinger of long-term stability. Like that tells you that things there are actually probably pretty delicate.
Yeah, on July 25th, a group named Iron 17 stormed the state security's headquarters at the Masara police station in Cairo, detaining several security personnel for hours. Videos filmed show the group condemning the closure of the Rafah crossing, a lifeline for Gaza's besieged population, and the arrest of activists collecting aid for the enclave. Their message was, end the genocide in Gaza and stop repressing Egyptians. That's it. Like, this is going to continue happening with greater frequency, and it will get to a point where it yields. It will get to a point where it will turn into a rebellion if they continue saying like, oh, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to do anything.
There's another thing here. I saw a chatter mention this, and it's also true, which is about like a lot of one of the biggest factors that people aren't really considering yet. And it's understandable why, because it's very difficult to, but it's about climate change. And that is, in Egypt, that is extremely important, both because of the issues of the Nile. There's a new dam built in Ethiopia that's also poised to like set against like not a knock on Ethiopia for building the dam, but just that like it's getting more, like, resources are not getting simpler there, they're getting more complicated. Yeah. And then you have obviously on top of like all of the infrastructure for climate resilience that all of these countries are going to have to invest in, at the same time that like the UAE is trying to like entrench Dubai's status as like the, you know, crossroads / money washing machine of the world. And it's not like, again, these are contradictions that like they don't necessarily end with like the collapse of like the regional order or something so smoothly, but it does suggest that there are like a lot of problems that none of these governments have a particularly cohesive, you know, have a particularly coherent set of ideas about how to resolve. I mean, the most that we see they're doing in this is that like maybe they're dialing back some of the Neom line city, like some of the more crazy adventurous stuff or whatever.
Yeah. George from Sweden to break the siege while Egyptians are doing fall, and he's not wrong. Yeah. I think that the Arab populations are seeing what their leadership is doing, or their lack of response, and their role in this as like a protectorate of Israeli and American interests in the region, while the rest of the world is like doing more. Where you got like white Christian Europeans doing more than the Egyptian government or all these like Gulf states. It gets to a point where people are gonna be like, what's happening here? Like, what are we doing here? They're not comfortable enough.
Also, Egypt,
in their finances, they're not comfortable. They are experiencing the same kind of volatility that you were talking about with like climate change, economic destabilization born out of climate change as well. That also allows this to be allows there to be too much resentment and enmity. Like, there needs to be a pressure valve for these people, and eventually that's what's going to happen. Like, George Floyd was simply the catalyst, but people were already frustrated because of a multitude of different factors, whether it be lockdowns, whether it be the economic instability that we're experiencing. And all it sometimes takes is like one catalyst for people to say, it's over. It's the breaking point. We've reached it. And go out and protest on the streets.
And let's also say,
successfully create a rebellion.
Let's also say the closest that Israel has come to falling, like the closest in its history, when it was at extreme peril in 1973, at least in the last half century, it was because of the Egyptian army. I think that there's a real, like, it's, you know, there's a real like part of why Egypt has historically needed to be weak from the Israeli strategic point of view is because Egypt is the only one of Israel's neighbors that by itself could develop the military capacity to actually take down the Israeli regime.
Shit. Oh, shit. Old Barry, he came out.
Oh, well, wow. At least he first, well, listen, at least we now know what he's saying about the hostages.
Oh, wow.
Wait, what's the article he shared?
Old Barry, dude. Wait, maybe he wrote it.
No. This is the.
Oh no, this
was the investigation.
Gazans are dying of starvation.
Wait, go back. What was the first link that he shared though?
This is it, I think, right?
No, it's
Jose Andres. People of good conscience must stop the starvation in Gaza. That's his buddy, Jose. I went to his restaurant when I was in Vegas. Bizarre Meat. Yeah. While a lasting resolution to the crisis in Gaza must involve a return of all hostages and the cessation of Israel's military operations, these articles underscore the immediate need for action to be taken to prevent the travesty of innocent people dying of preventable starvation. Hey, everybody, suck my dick.
Hold on. Barack Obama is supposed to be a good writer. Action to be taken to prevent the travesty of innocent people of dying of preventable starvation. To prevent the travesty
of innocent
people dying of preventable.
He's hit hard times.
Prevent.
Okay, first of all,
that's just good writing.
His marriage is in turmoil. Okay, that's number one.
Maybe you should work on preventing that.
Jennifer Aniston is not throwing it back like she used to. That's another issue. Okay, and last but not least, it's really hard for him to say something mean about Israel or even remotely critical about Israel 22 months into.
Let me be clear.
Goddamn genocide.
I want to have a showbiz career. I want to produce things. I want to make movies, make films. Yeah. And we all know who runs Hollywood. We all know who runs Hollywood. It's no joke.
He does. That's true. He is a Jew hater.
That's actually that's actually been the long game. This is like his.
Listen, I as the #1 Jew hater.
Listen, is everybody's seen that photo of me with Rashid Khalidi 30 years ago, and listen, I've been practicing African American taqiyya this whole time.
Yeah, Muslim taqiyya. He is a Kenyan Muslim after all. This is great. Aid must be permitted to reach people in Gaza. There's no justification for help keeping food, water away from civilians. Yeah, Obama finally, Barry-O, dude, he did it.
Well, that's what that Tommy Veeder tweet was prepping us for.
Yeah.
It was like, don't get on your high horse.
Oh my God. You're joking, but like, I don't think that's a joke. I think that might be literally why.
Well, listen, Tommy Veeder is a former spokesperson for the National Security Council at a time that it was drone striking so many civilians we lost count for a bit there. He knows a lot about high horses and when to get off them.
Yeah. Jose Andres, people of good conscience must stop the starvation in Gaza. Damn. Jose also an anti-Semite of the week.
I mean, but he's had like his employee. I mean, in his case, I will say that like this is even a little bit like sad because like his staffers have been killed.
Yeah, his friends,
they've been blown up, and he's not.
People he knows were murdered by the Israeli state while they were literally there. I will say this over and over again. Listen, Jose Andres, massive liberal. I think he's overall a good dude. Sure, okay, and. When I went to his restaurant, but like he was sent, World Central Kitchen was sent into Israel and then into the Gaza Strip to operate within the Gaza Strip specifically to do the same kind of propaganda that the American state was trying to do to claim that Israel is allowing aid in. How can you say Israel's not allowing aid in? Look at this beloved figure, Jose Andres, and his beloved his beloved World Central Kitchen. Okay, that is the reason why he went in with obviously the Israeli go-ahead, handshakes and photo opportunities, and he went in and he set up the World Central Kitchen inside of the Gaza Strip. They were engaging in, of course, as every aid worker has to in the Gaza Strip, deconfliction with the Israeli military, and they still triple tapped his staffers.
Listen, it's because you may not know this, but WCK, okay? WCK, World Central Hamas.
Oh, yeah, the K for Hamas.
The K for Hamas, yeah.
Yeah. And in any case, like, he obviously changed his outlook quickly after that. So he has been an outspoken advocate since Israel killed his staffers. So this is not surprising to me at all. But once again, this is another pressure point. This is another pressure point. It's interesting that the Pod Save crew of former Obama people have broken with Obama himself and the Israel lobby and are willing to make arguments both about the morality and U.S. interests with respect to supporting Israel. More signs of where things are going for Israel. Yeah, they have been. Ben Rhodes. I mean, Ben Rhodes and Tommy Vitor have been unironically daggering Israel for a while
Ben
now.
Rhodes, I think people should go back and
also big anti-Semite.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say there's a New York Times story from about a decade ago that was written by
self-hating Jew Ben Rhodes.
David Samuels, who's an asshat. And the profile was of Ben Rhodes, and it was like a very like critical profile, but it's like critical in like it's from the right basically, but it's really worth like reading because even people like Ben Rhodes, who are not like fire-breathing leftists by any freaking means, were targeted very clearly by Israel and its surrogates because of Iran.
JCPOA,
exactly, because of the Iran deal, and like there was always, and this was again like a failure of Obama's because he also like his administration kind of like up in the second term and managing the peace process such as it was, just because like they like there's a the journalist Nathan Thrall in his first book, The Only Language They Understand, he cites sources saying how like Secretary of State then John Kerry, he misled both sides, and that there was like a real, there was like American mismanagement of some of those diplomatic relationships. Fine, whatever, but like the key piece of like that second term achievement, right? This diplomatic capstone was the Iran deal, and rather than use the fact that they were already successfully pushing this Iran deal through the Senate, that they got people like Cory Booker to behind it, like these staunch allies of the AIPAC establishment in DC and so on. There wasn't like that wasn't like a springboard for more interesting and exciting possibilities in terms of trying to pressure Israel. God forbid. It was instead meant to be like the capstone of a victory lap, in the same way, by the way, that Obama's efforts to ease tensions with Cuba were. That he did everything but stop short of the embargo, and obviously because Trump succeeded him, all of that shit was for naught. Iran included, especially. To have done all this stuff to pass the JCPOA and have done none of the necessary political work to actually ensure that it could survive. So yeah, I could imagine that his former staffers, or at least the people who positioned themselves and styled themselves as like the inheritors or the preservers of the best part of his legacy, are willing to say something. They're willing to say that like actually maybe like tethering America's future to Israel as the 51st state was a bad idea.
Yeah, no, for sure. I like I said, that's why I was calling Ben Rhodes an anti-Semite, because of his influence or his role in implementing the JCPOA, which obviously Israel hated. Just like Israel does not want a stable Syria, even if it's directly under the influence of another American ally, another regional player in the region, Turkey. This is
a similar playbook here for Israel's interest to look at Syria in that way. Also Egypt, which is Iraq. Until the Iraq War in 2003, Israel's biggest strategic antagonist, biggest regional antagonist, was Iraq, at least as they saw it. And that's why Netanyahu spoke before the American Congress to say, "Listen, I know something about fighting terror, and we must get Saddam." And they did all that. And it's like, all right, well, look at Iraq now. And it's not the same situation as Syria, but like mostly it is like a playground for competing influences of foreign governments. And in Iraq's case, like Iran has now been able to ironically, considering we were the ones who moved in there, like Iran is now able to project more influence there, just as, in say Syria, for example, you have your friends in Ankara who are trying to be able to project their power as well. But like the thing that is like the common thread there, right, is that both countries, both Syria and Iraq, are so much weaker as states. I mean, they're non-military entities as states functionally, as far as Israel's concerned. They are no more regional threat.
The reality of the matter is, regardless of Saddam's weaknesses or tendencies for violence in its domestic population, ethnic, his management of sectarian tensions was to just kill people and arrest them. If Iraq maintains stability and sovereignty, if Syria maintains stability and sovereignty, in a similar way, in a way that's not dissimilar to Iran, outside of Western interests, and they basically developed themselves as sovereign nation states, I think that Israel would not be with doing everything that it's doing currently. And that's it. That is the major reason for why Israel wanted all of these other countries that presented a threat to its greater Israel project of death and destruction to be pacified or be destroyed in some way, shape, or form. They don't have to do it to the Gulf states, with the exception of Yemen, obviously, because those Gulf states are completely servile to, they've been domesticated, and they're completely servile to American interest, to Western interests. And that's it. That's the reason why they get away with just get away with being able to do their own genocides if they feel the need to do so. And that's the reason why they get away with being able to whitewash or engage in like sports washing and things like that. What were you going to say?
I think the only thing I would have to add to that really is just that it should mean something about the character of a state if the only way that it can continue to exist as such is if all of the neighboring states to it are like weak and destroyed and rotted entities that are unable to like serve their citizenry, that are unable to serve the people there in meaningful ways. And obviously that's not to say that like Saddam Hussein or Bashar al-Assad were like, you know, like perennial nominees for humanitarian of the year. But it is to say that like what has taken their place rather clearly seems like it's meant to serve the interests of people who are not in that country. And it's not something like that's again, like, you know, that's a frame of discussion that's like pretty difficult to have in the United States, just because we still speak in the language of foreign policy moralism, even though more and more all the time it is like these aggressive like strategic, like realpolitik or power politics stuff that clearly guide what people are after here.
Yep. And
that's part of what engenders the cynicism, is that it makes people say, if you constantly talk about human rights or why you're doing stuff, and then we have wall-to-wall starving children on the TV for weeks at a time.
Yeah, your word. I mean, I think like America's immediate move to represent itself as the global police in the aftermath of Russia's unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine, and then its unlimited support to Israel after October 7th happening under one president, I think played a big role in the way that even like our Western allies see the United States of America as like the world police. Because there are still a lot of people, I think, that just believe that eat up the propaganda. There are definitely people in the populations of these countries that live under the umbrella, under the protection of American empire, that certainly wanted to believe that like, certainly wanted to believe that like America is, it fucks up from time to time for good because the enemies are far scarier and far more evil. And
we provide, and also, but there's another piece of it, which is that like, what do most people in a lot of these kinds of countries like care about? They care about where's their next meal coming from? Where are their kids' next meal is going to come from? How are they going to be able to build a house that doesn't fall on them? How are they going to have healthy and meaningful and long lives? And the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So what states exist that promulgate a theory of how you're going to be able to do that to better the lives of people around you? Remember, there's no Soviet Union anymore, and we're not in a position where it seems like China is trying to advocate like an international like policy ethos that would reconstruct that. That's just not how they think about these issues.
Even if it was to its own benefit, they don't do it in their own backyard. As I constantly point to the Philippines, like they could be engaging in acts of direct destabilization in the Philippines, like
they sell arms. I mean, they
arm the Maoists,
and they sell arms to Israel. They sell arms to the Indonesian military, which uses them on poor islanders in West Papua New Guinea. Yeah. I mean, there is a real like I would say that it's when you have a world without the Soviet Union in it means that we just have like this liberal international order, which means that like it's the only force that has been able to like credibly advance a case for, well, here is how like things improve for you person there is the boss of global capitalism. It's the United States. And so, yeah, like there's a lot of people who, because that's the only answer on offer to how do things get better, like they're hoping for it, even if they don't agree, obviously, with what like the U.S. is doing to support Israel. Or even if it means they don't have like a favorable idea or a favorable opinion of the United States or something, but it does mean that like the answer that the U.S. has for all of these things, which is like, we'll help you get your bread up. We'll help you build like, strong native industries that will allow you to, whatever, like the answers that they have for this, which which are themselves often just lies, of course.
Yeah. It's going to be really good when foreign capital flows into your country. And by that, I mean, we're going to give your government money, and they're going to be bribed with like a piece of that money to bring that loan directly back into foreign corporations that will go into the pockets of not even the laborers of said foreign corporations, but instead like the shareholders.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the examples that to me I've thought about a lot lately is, of course, just because of like the green like the green transition is, thinking about like the DRC and thinking about places like Kolwezi in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where again, like the value chain is like it may as well not exist for the people actually picking coltan out of the earth with their hands. Like what promise is made to them?
Yeah. Well, if we improve their material circumstances too good, then it's gonna be too costly to extract these minerals and extract these natural resources that we need for cheap goods, cheap consumer items. So we can't do that.
And if you want to also like add a little bit to it, like give a bit of historical context to it, like part of the reason that these places don't have the authority or the ability, the domestic integrity to be able to, develop their resources in their own way. Again, to develop in ways that aren't reliant on like making sure that the West will give you money. Those futures, those alternate paths that they could have taken were stolen from them because we killed their leaders, because we destabilized their neighborhoods, if not the countries themselves.
Yeah.
And continued to do so because it suited our prerogatives.
Vitor, okay, here, let's just give you the summarization of this conversation. With just 7% of Democrats now saying Israel's war on Gaza is fully justified, Ben Rhodes, who, again, like I said, self-hating a Jewish man, Ben Rhodes, according to Israel Defenders, says, why are we giving billions of military aid to a corrupt far-right autocrat engaged in war crimes? Tommy Vitor acknowledges, Democrats are afraid to touch this, but if you can actually make an argument why we should rethink this relationship, and maybe it doesn't make sense to send $3.8 billion a year, which, by the way, interesting number. Who was the who came up with that? Whose number is that? That's weird. Who was the guy?
Who was the president?
Right. That was Obama. That was Obama. Obama's number. 3.8 over a decade on his way out, which we continued, of course, because once there's that money is allocated, that will continue and it'll only increase. Anyway, $3.8 billion a year to Israel to kill civilians in Gaza. I think you'll be pushing an open door. He questioned whether it makes sense to provide a really rich country with $3+ billion in military support per year.
That's a Matt Iglesias line, by the way. He's like, when he's talked about this in the last few months, he makes this point about like when I interviewed Obama and I asked him about Israel, it was why do we give so much money to a really rich country? To which I say yeah, that is an interesting question on one level, but that's when it just also is like there's an answer for that, which is that like they do things that we want them to do.
Yeah, that's also when Matty Iglesias had freshly come from his West Bank trip, and he was an anti-Zionist for a little bit. Wasn't there like a brief stint where Matt Iglesias was like, I think Israel's crazy racist.
I mean, it's a really hard thing. I think it's really hard for like warm-blooded, normal human beings to go to the West Bank and to come out of it with any other opinion, unless you're getting like a settler tour. Like it's a sign. If you see that and your experience coming out of it is that what's going on there is anything other than like, a military occupation that's been going on for decades that rises to the level of genocide, frankly, at different moments in time.
Yeah.
Then like you're not like your human card may be revoked, pal. Like I think you're just not seeing things as they are, and there's something about it that separates you from the rest of us. That's as far as I can tell.
That's why I don't yell too much about J Street, even though they're like liberal Zionists. Ultimately, they still inevitably create a bunch of anti-Zionists by doing those West Bank trips. I mean, yourself included.
I was about to say, and Simone, when we were here talking about that, it was part of that experience. The piece of it, though, I mean, granted, I will say, like, J Street has moved away from doing that with younger people. It's just no longer part of like it's a thing that they did 10 years ago. It's not as dramatically part of their work now. But I mean, that's always why, like, I think if you could, like, the more, if you want to change somebody's mind about this, then like send them to Hebron. You know, let them see what's going on.
The hosts argue that the U.S.-Israel right to forever wars, moral hypocrisy, and authoritarianism. You don't have to be a scholar of history of the Middle East to know that it's cynical when Democratic politicians mouth support for a two-state solution while giving a blank check of support to a government that wants to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip. Yeah, I mean, I still don't think like before these guys also become like one-staters, we're not going to have this like massive sea change among like people with institutional power that will get to a point where they also don't see like Hamas as like a reasonable counter to all of these things. Because right now, as someone who like constantly tries to understand where people are, like where people's moral compass is on this issue, yes, people are obviously horrified by everything that they're seeing, right? They're obviously horrified by everything that they're seeing, starving children in Gaza. They don't like that. They know that Israel's responsible for it, and they think Israel's up for doing that. They don't like Israel, but they still haven't made that logical leap into, well, if these guys are this like unstoppable force of ethnic cleansing, then yeah, that breeds response, that invokes some kind of militant reaction, and until they get to that point, and until they like actually recognize that these guys aren't supposed to be perfect victims, and that there is going to be some kind of military reaction, they're still going to eat that bait every time someone invokes the name of Hamas.
I agree. And on top of which also they're going to like, they're still trapped. I mean, there's a reason, by the way, that like a lot of right wingers, especially like in tech, like that Sean McGuire guy, are now like harping on the word Islamist instead of saying Muslim and stuff, because there remains, I believe, like fundamentally, there is a refuse, like the Ukraine stuff just like really highlighted it. Like there's some people we are allowed to see as human, and then there's some people who are just supposed to sit down, who are just supposed to lie down and take it. And that's it. And like, and why are they supposed to lie down and take it? Well, because like their children are going to be, do you see the coloring books? Do you see the coloring books that they give their kids? Like, it's that, like, that is the logic.
There's still so much like, there's still so much Islamophobia in America and in the Western world because of the war on terror and like justifying the war on terror, that like the average American still has this like weird position that is inherently contradictory, which implies that like on the one hand, like Israel's like the inflection point for Israel's military conquest here, while is totally inhumane. It kind of makes sense that they had to react because Hamas provoked them, because they're scary, barbaric, rapist monsters. You know,
I mean, well, this remains one of the things that I was most agitated about in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, was the number of people, liberals, who kept talking about like, like the systematic rape and all the screams of that word stuff. Because again, like it was very obvious to anybody who's like, who's frankly, whose perspective is not blinded by personal racism or just like the ignorance that comes with having been, come up as a political subject in the time of the war on terror and all that, to recognize that, like, when you start like labeling all of like these Muslim hordes, so to speak, as rapists and as like criminals who are coming to like destroy your way of life or whatever, simply because they resent it and not because you have kept them walled in with denying them everything from basic construction material to the ability to fish in their own waters, all before October 7th and everything like that. Then like, you are going to create, you are writing out the international permission slip for something like what, like a genocide.
That's why I get
mass
so
slaughter.
mad when they like, did you see CNN literally had Mahmoud Khalil on, and they were like, will you condemn Hamas? Will you condemn Hamas? Will you condemn Hamas 22 months into this genocide? After he's already served a 104-day prison sentence that he should not have actually served at all. And it's just so gross, because like the Hamas condemnation demands at this stage are directly trying to create a permission structure for the actions of Israel, like that Israel's gone a little too far, but like, can you really blame them? That's what this is. Can you really blame them for being violent for the past 22 months? Can you really blame them for genocide? Because after all, Hamas is right there. And that's part of the reason why I think it's important for even people like myself and people like yourself to openly state that outside of October 7, okay, outside of October 7, like every single thing that Hamas and the Palestinian resistance has done in defense of the Gaza Strip against the Israeli military is not only legal, but also moral. It's legal under human rights, international human rights. It's also moral. It's the correct thing to do. Like, what do you mean? It's actually Israel that is engaging in an illegal action even before this genocide, which is a crime of all crimes. Like Israel going into the Gaza Strip and occupier is literally illegal.
And also, by the way, like Israel's kidnapped Palestinians too. Way more of them than Israelis were taken on October 7th, and they've been doing it for years longer. It's called administrative detention, and it's a process by which they can throw anybody that they want in jail and keep them there. There's a but again, to a Western audience, what is immediately going to scan is like more sympathetic, like sans context, the person taken from their homes in a night raid by a guy holding an AK-47, or the person who is taken in a relatively sanitized operation by a uniformed person who, is then disappeared into a prison system that you don't hear anything about. And whose families, by the way, aren't able to go on the press and able to talk constantly about the pain of not having them at home, the pain of their arbitrary detention and all this and so on. It's a very, like, part of what I think, in addition to, like, we were talking earlier about, like, what's going to happen when international investigators and people are finally allowed into Gaza, if they are, inshallah, and we're able to determine something, like, we're able to divine something like a picture of what's happened. I also believe that there's got to be like a similar kind of, like it's not going to happen anytime soon. But the permission space that was just created for people to totally dehumanize Palestinians by, again, like not listening or examining any context, is not even considering the Palestinian hostages who have been that way for decades at this point, is it's good. It's part of what has made us less human as a population. It has made us less in touch with what I think it means to be human, what it means to be moral, what it means to feel the pain of other people and hope that we can alleviate. Like, it's just we just decided that they don't look like us, they don't live like us, which ain't exactly that true. They play Call of Duty just like us. They want to feed themselves just like us. They want to live in a free and happy world just like us. But our society is committed to saying and demanding the opposite.
Let's take a look at what Senator Lindsey Graham had to say about Israel and Gaza just recently, like on his Sunday Meet the Press circuit that he participated in.
President Trump's.
And then after that, I'm going to make my Jewish guest, Noah, read a Felix tweet because I can't do it myself.
All right. Oh, you read one of my own tweets.
Yeah.
Netanyahu to, quote, finish the job this week. I know that you are in touch with President Trump. You're in touch with Israeli officials. What are you anticipating is going to happen next? What does finish the job mean, Senator?
Oh, yeah,
Well, I talked to Cindy McCain last night. Here's some good news for the people in Gaza. Humanitarian quarters are now going to be open. Israel's going to work with the UN, the World Food Program, to get some food into these people who need it. But I think what the topic we're talking about today is a change in strategy. I think President Trump has come to believe, and I certainly have come to believe, there's no way you're going to negotiate an end to this war with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization who is chartered to destroy the state of Israel. They're religious Nazis. They hold Israeli hostages. I think Israel's come to conclude that they can't achieve a goal of ending the war with Hamas that would be satisfactory to the safety of Israel. And if they're going to do in Gaza what we did in Tokyo and Berlin, take the place by force, then start over again, presenting a better future for the Palestinians, hopefully having the Arabs take over the West Bank and Gaza. But I think going forward, Christian, you're going to see a change in tactics, a full military effort by Israel
change in
to
tactics,
take Gaza
very
down
different
like
than
we did in Tokyo and Berlin.
I like that he said a change in tactics, and then he just described the exact tactic that Israel has applied so far as though it's a significant change in tactics. Like, there is no more that they could do in terms of bombing the Gaza Strip. They have already done exactly what he's talking about, which is like Tokyo and Dresden. Okay.
When?
Senator.
Which is the reason why I said it is like here is Representative Dan Goldman says Gaza is on the brink of mass starvation. Israel and the U.S. and the international community must collaborate to ensure a massive surge of humanitarian relief immediately. This war must end. And let's be clear, Hamas can end it today. Fuck you.
Not true. Not true. All right.
Here's what Felix said.
Israel obviously deserves a Dresden aerial campaign every day for a generation, but we're even more forgotten as a country. I can't think of very many places where the elected officials would be surprised that a genocide they facilitated could end up looking bad.
And then he says, as I said before,
I hope this at least causes some aid distributed by someone other than the sociopathic criminals of the Gaza, the GHF. But this whole act is like John Wayne Gacy doing a tearful PSA for missing young men in the Chicagoland area. I think that's about right. I mean, there is like
I just saw the first thing that he said, which is, I can't read that.
I will say that, like,
given my background,
yeah, okay. I think one of the things that's just kind of nuts to me is the degree to which it is still persisted among the American political and media class that Hamas could end this if they wanted to. That that lie is to me one of the more crazy ones that people are trying to pull off in July of 2025. Israel has said that that's not the case. They say it over and over again.
But no one repeats that truth in the Western media, and that's precisely what it is. Like, it's just like this is only talked about here, right? Like, I am one of the few outlets that consistently, alongside Drop Site and Democracy Now, Sam Cedar with the Majority Report, like there are very, very few media outlets, none of which are mainstream, that actually correctly talk about Israel's role in spoiling the ceasefire negotiations, Zeteo as well, that most people are just completely deluded. They don't even think about it, I don't think. Like, they don't care to think about it. I think some people kind of understand it. Maybe they're frustrated, like, why isn't this happening? Why is there no ceasefire? But if all of these reputable institutions and trusted officials, like all the way from Anthony Blinken to Witkoff and the Trump administration, in unison is saying it's always Hamas that is the responsible party for violating these ceasefire negotiations or not coming to the table and making ridiculous demands without ever revealing what those ridiculous demands are, by the way. Because the ridiculous demands are a permanent cessation
what ends
of
up
hostilities.
happening, and this has been the way it's worked now for the last few times that this has happened, has been that Israel and the U.S. claim Hamas did something, the negotiations, that Hamas demanded too much, or that Hamas wanted a pony or something like that. And then you just have to go and look at what Jeremy Scahill says to essentially get anything, to get the truth, to get anything resembling an actual breakdown of what happened there. Because also, by the way, the Western news media, I think when it comes to sort of, again, it's related to the idea of how oh, well, they're crazy Islamists. They're not rational people. They're they're committed to the destruction of Israel. They've all these crazy ideas, and they rely on those really crude racist assumptions to, suggest oh yeah, well, there's no way that we could figure out a cease, that a ceasefire could be with them. You kidding me? Certainly not.
Phil Gordon, White House, NSC, and State Department under Biden.
He was Kamala's top foreign policy person.
Says, even if this leads to a meaningful change, still obviously to be determined, the Israeli government's decision in March to break the ceasefire, blockade Gaza, and escalate militarily will prove to have been catastrophic. It made no real difference against Hamas, led to immeasurable additional suffering in Gaza, failed to free any hostages, further divided Israeli society. I don't know if is Israeli society that divided?
It is, but not in the way that not in a productive way. I'd put it that way. It's the axis of kill them all and kill them all. You know, it's not. I would also say that the other piece of what makes Israeli society is it needs this conflict to function, because it's also not Like it's not a country with a lot of equal. It has extremely high income inequality. Yeah. It has like it's what remains of its welfare state within like the 48 borders is like being eviscerated all the time. And by the way, like a fifth of the people who live there are Arabs, and those people are, I mean, like many, like they're like. They were already, most of them, not particularly enthusiastic, to put it mildly, about participating in, like being citizens or being subjects of the Israeli state. And many of them now are like, they see no future, no hope whatsoever. So it's like Israel is divided, certainly, but it's divided in such a way so that like it's not like stopping the way that it's like barreling toward this like, again, like this very like Third Reich style kind of future.
Yeah. This is coming off of Barak Ravid, the Israeli occupying forces' very own Barak Ravid, saying the IDF is going to implement humanitarian pause in the fighting in several population centers in Gaza starting Sunday morning and until Sunday evening to allow the UN and other aid organizations to safe access delivery of aid, Israeli officials tell me.
I also like the phrase population center.
Yeah.
That's like it sounds, it's such a, I mean, it's just insane military jargon.
Yeah. It's truly horrifying what we have done to the Palestinians and what we have allowed Israel to do to the Palestinians, what we've given Israel the weapons to do to the Palestinians. So, I don't know. There is no...
Wasn't there brain rot you wanted to show me?
Well, that was Umama Sume, but that's later in the day. So when you come back from lunch, if
we'll
I'm
do it.
Still live, that's when I'll do it. Yeah. Nicholas Hawaii says the UN, so the same organization that's being blamed by Israel for mass starvation in Gaza for not distributing aid, is now being entrusted with distributing aid. Strange that. Genocidal state in need of a Hasbara tune-up, which of course was bullshit to begin with. It was complete bullshit when they were like, they're not allowing...
Andala.
Well, there was a Wall Street Journal story last year that just like was the big one in the Western press that said that like Israeli sources say...
I'm Israeli, and I can say there's a debate right now in Israel about the starvation. People are really unsure of how it happened and who was responsible, but they don't want people to starve.
Kamti baboker, I woke up, and I see the starving.
It's insane that this is the only thing that wakes them up, but somehow it works, so y'all have to keep pushing. Damn, that's crazy. I guess like when you do see the rib cage of a starving baby that died, even Israeli society's like, this is kind of up. We gotta... Because like... It's such a 1-to-1 for the Holocaust, dude. It is such a 1-to-1. Like, there is literally the exact same, like, starving baby images from the Holocaust is a 1-to-1 comparison in Gaza right now. It's 1-to-1. I mean, you've seen the images like side by side. It's identical.
I mean, and also like Israel, like they do it in uniforms, but like Israelis are like,
well, the Nazis had uniforms.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like they've revealed, like they do all this stuff in uniforms, but it's like what they're doing is like I mean, it's these insane, bizarre, spectacular acts of cruelty that we're only not seeing, by the way, because because the government in that country had to run a national campaign to remind people that it's a bad idea to post things on the internet that might land you in, courts of justice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of why like the Hind Rajab Foundation and the work they do is, I think, becoming increasingly critical, and is part of why the pressure of this is adding up, because it's like, oh, wow, prosecutors are like, detaining Israeli veterans in Belgium for waving Givati flags at a music festival. And it's, like that is part of this pressure as well as the starving, children. Like there is a, I think that the starvation stuff is just like as a, like this, it sounds like horrible, but I do believe it's the case that like as content, it is something that is more touching to the people committing these crimes than like seeing the devastation wrought by munitions. This
is funny. I've been following the Hebrew Haaretz lib comments for the last year or so, and at this point, some of them are single staters because they prefer having a majority of Palestinians and a majority of Haredim and religious settlers negatively polarized so much against your religious population that you stop being racist. I mean, I don't know how much that...
It's a phenomenon, and that I won't deny, but it is like not...
probably marginal. It's probably higher than the number of people who are anti-Zionist, like straightforward.
Well, and again, it goes to what I was saying though before about like inequality within Israel, which is that like a lot of the anti-religious resentment is about like, yes, the control over like, let's say, like policy in the West Bank and so on that they've seen in Gaza that they've been able to exert through like the kind of soft coups of Smotrich and Ben Gvir. But there is also like a real anxiety and frustration over all of the money that's allocated for like, a bunch of people who never learn basic math to just study Torah all day and like collect welfare more or less.
Yeah.
Like that's something that is also engendering a lot of resentment.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the issue in perpetuity in Israel and like Israeli domestic politics amongst the Jewish population is that, you got these welfare queens that don't do shit. And
This clip is nuts.
Israelis.
Trevor Phillips.
But I think that the issue here is we can see demonstrations weekly by Israelis against their own government.
Enough, mate.
And the
Not
point
enough.
I'm really just making is, isn't
true.
it a bit unfair to say this is the Israelis as a whole?
Stop it. Stop it, Trevor. What's unfair is what's happening to these babies. What's unfair is that image that you showed us. That's unfair. 1 hour from, I've been in Gaza, I've been in the West Bank, I've been in Israel many times. What's unfair is that 1 hour from the hunger, people are sitting down to their unthreatened dinners to turn on the next Netflix soap. 1 hour. So if Israelis want to protest, get in your cars. This is very Bob stuff, I know. Sorry about that. Okay. Get in your cars, stuff your cars full of food and drive through that border and let your own army stop you.
That, or, there's more unique and interesting ways in which many reservists who don't want to tour again could stop that, could make a permanent halt to touring in Gaza. If you're a reservist and you're like, I want to get back to my marketing job and wear my capri pants and listen to the worst psytrance music ever created, then, there's the conscientious objectors, and then there are people who could do the Vietnam route. There was
a lot of people went to Canada. I mean, look, a lot of what Israelis are dealing with is that there is no Canada next to Israel that would take.
To be fair, Vietnam, it took a long time for people to get there,
yeah.
But.
I mean, but at the same time, also like Israel. One thing that's a bit different about like Israel and the U.S. in that context is that like Israel has had this draft for decades, and while like class distinctions within Israel do make themselves felt within the ranks of the army, within the units, I do also think that like a lot like it's the like sense of buy-in that still persists. I mean, even among people in Israel who might know
Israel's Canada is Cyprus.
That's what I thought. I was almost said that. I thought about that, but then like that, it's because like if you're in Israel and you're like if you're in Israel and you want to get like gay married or like,
you got to go to Cyprus.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I still Israelis I still see like Israelis post vacation content from Cyprus because I think that's also one of the few safe places for them to go at this point.
Yeah.
But I think that it is like the Israeli army is again like it's the like a lot of stuff would have to happen, I think, before you get to the point where stuff like fragging becomes like an active conversation.
Yeah. Which I didn't bring up at all. I was just saying,
I brought it up.
Yeah, I didn't bring it up. I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing. Oh yeah, Mehdi Hasan or Senator Cory Booker, witnessing the catastrophic hunger and suffering of civilians, especially children, women, the sick and elderly in Gaza has been heartbreaking. The crisis in Gaza must be met with an immediate and drastic surge in life-saving resources such as desperately needed food, water, and medicine inducing. We're all trying to find out the guy who did this. Like, who could it be that allowed this to happen in the Democratic Party, in the Republican Party? Like, how did this happen? It just must have happened magically overnight.
You saw the photo of him trying to hide, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that was...
It's our collective moral duty to ensure that humanitarian relief reaches those who need it most urgently. The strategy of Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has not worked. Oh, well, I would say it has worked because the goal was to murder Palestinians desperately seeking aid in 3 fucking aid
Wait, I'm
zones.
sorry. You're telling me that hiring a bunch of like roided out mercenaries to like just distribute aid to not effectively distribute the aid? I'm shocked.
Yeah. Very odd to acknowledge that a country is intentionally starving millions, then calling them an ally. Maybe Roe is being descriptive and not normative, but shouldn't the U.S. not be allies with states that use child starvation as a weapon by definition? Isn't this the take-home lesson here? Yeah, I'm sick of the tired platitude. For an ally like Israel, we must not disagree publicly or in the media. Not when there's mass starvation. This is the time for every American to speak up publicly. Prime Minister Netanyahu, let in the food, medicine, and aid. We must not be complicit.
What does that mean? We must not be, must not be?
I mean, what are we? I think
that's not a thing we can negotiate anymore. It's not a negotiable piece of this.
I need the Thomas Masseys of Congress to start entertaining the notion of like military intervention in Israel, so that these guys will then be like, maybe we should stop the genocide.
That actually, the first that's right. Thomas Massey probably would be the there are a couple like the first to like get a bill through that's like essentially like not just like about cutting off aid, not just about like not like it's like downgrading the alliance to unfriendly relations, and also like threatening to like send the 82nd Airborne or whatever.
Someone needs to start entertaining that in a position of power, even if they know that it's not going to go anywhere, so the rest of the people have an expanded permission structure to be like, well, okay, military intervention seems a bridge too far, so what we have to do is cut off all offensive and defensive weapons, you know? And yes, I do not believe a Democrat would ever say that. So that's why I'm saying Thomas Massie could be the guy.
Because Thomas Massie he would do that.
Yeah, I could see him. I could see him saying that. So if any Thomas Massie staffers are in the chat right now, you know, go talk to your boy. See if he entertains something like that. I feel like they would just kill him if he
yeah, they would be like, Representative he gets called into the principal's office. Or no, it's like the scene from Goodfellas where it's like Joe Pesci walks into the room, it's like, and just gets immediately plugged from behind.
Yeah, that's Pegasus instantly. Instantly, Thomas Massie, Pegasus. Here's a laptop camera of him like masturbating to whatever kind of. Well,
this is you raised though an actual interesting point I've thought about, which is again like the question of like what would be a good pretext for the diplomatic rupture between Jerusalem and Washington, and to me the answer clearly is like when it is revealed that even more than has been demonstrated to be done in the past, that Israel is like actively spying on, surveilling, hacking, and trying to, you know, covertly with American politicians, like elected officials.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, if that's revealed that they're doing that to like AOC or Ilhan Omar, fine, nobody cares. But again, if they did it to, if like they do it to like a lib, a normal, or they do it to a Republican who's not Thomas Massie, which I suspect they probably do. Like I would bet that.
Yeah.
Then I think that would be a pretty good pretext.
Yeah, like Cory Booker.
Yeah, Cory Booker doing a front-facing camera video. I've just learned that my friend Benjamin Netanyahu has been spying.
Yeah, the strategy of Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has not worked. We must do all we can to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza as a part of the strategy to save lives, decrease Hamas's influence and capabilities, release all remaining hostages, strengthen Israel's security, and ultimately end this war. These goals are not mutually exclusive. Rather, they go hand in hand. Of course, here it is. That very same Cory Booker. And I mean, even as recently as like last week was in when Benjamin Netanyahu was in DC doing media spots with the Nelk boys. In between that, he was visiting. He was visited by a gaggle of congresspersons from both parties. It was 2 weeks ago. Cory Booker was there. Could you have not potentially talked about that? Also, here's Channel 12, apparently, for the first time ever, mainstream Israeli TV has covered the hunger in Gaza. So I guess that's the reason why Israeli society is like in a state of panic as well. Not out of like self-preservation in the way that like cynical liberal Zionists do when they say like, oh, you know, we have to do it right with our beautiful secular IDF, but instead, like, maybe there is definitely, maybe there is people who are just looking at this and going, I don't think this is appropriate. This looks a little too close to the Holocaust. And it has to be stated, I'm not relying on reports out of the Gaza Strip. I speak daily with quite a few Gazans. And I can tell you about what they tell me personally over the phone. People who haven't eaten for days, nothing goes into their mouths for entire days. When they do eat, the offer is horribly meager. For example, it might be just lentils for days on end. We're talking about weakness, dizziness, people reporting that they've lost dozens of kilos. And I have to tell you, while responsibility, of course, lies with... Of course, the responsibility lies with Hamas.
Of course, the responsibility lies with the party that has no power whatsoever to let in aid.
Yeah.
No ability whatsoever. The responsibility lies with them.
Yeah, because Hamas, they're there. And
but Gam also Israel.
Yeah, they could potentially eat some of the aid, which is why we have to keep starving children and keep killing them. But it also lies with Israel, he says. Wow. In this sense, it must be sad, in the bluntness, most unequivocal way, even if enough humanitarian aid gets into Gaza, and that's what they'll tell you in Israel, even when enough food enters the Gaza Strip, and it's true, it may very well be true. The problem is in the distribution mechanism. It's broken. It's failed. So tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands ultimately do not get the food. To get any food in those distribution hubs in southern Gaza, you need to be a man, a strong man, and also be bulletproof as well. And also, not only bulletproof, but also tank shells can't
Well, it sounds like
you.
what he's winding up to say is that like you have to be willing to like fight against a mob to get it.
Yeah, and willing to go in and fight in order to get food, and even then you might not succeed. People in northern Gaza have a very hard time getting food. In the markets, it must be said, the prices, in my opinion, are the most expensive on the face of the earth. This is true. There's no place in the world where prices are so high. And remember, we're talking about Gaza, where people there are focused on only one thing, 24 hours a day, looking for food, and simply can't get it. That's the situation. We need to grasp reality as it is. Yeah. It's, the way I see it is like, that's the last part of this equation is the whole like, but Hamas narrative needs to go away. And once that goes away, it's over. It's
because
done.
like, that's the only thing that's like got people left is that it's like, oh, well, there is somebody even worse than Israel in this situation. And it's Hamas. And that like, once you've already given up the idea, it's like, all right, like, well, Hamas at this point is like not like really like they don't pose like an active security threat to Israel.
Yeah.
And to the extent that they're resisting, it's pretty clearly because Israel continues active military operations that result in constant loss of civilian life.
Yeah.
So there's no like all that's left is holding people is the fact that like Hamas, you know, kids books or whatever like are like inappropriate. That's the extent of it, but I'm not even gonna like bother contesting.
That does unironically stem from unlimited Islamophobia and also like the decades of dehumanization of the Palestinian population in general, because like it's a way to say all Arabs or all Palestinians without saying it. That's precisely what they're doing, and that's the intention, and that's precisely why like when Israel does this kind of thing. There are still plenty of people who go, well, they kind of deserve it. You know, people act as though there is a world of difference between someone saying, oh, innocent civilians deserve to live, but Hamas, and people who say there are no innocent civilians because Hamas. There is functionally no difference. And there is no difference within the Israeli calculation, like the Israeli military calculation. And there's certainly no difference within that framework as well, like within the way that people propagandize here, where they go, oh, dude, you just got to, what can you do? You got to starve some people, otherwise Hamas. That's it.
Was intercepted in international waters. Video footage showed activists on board with their hands up as soldiers took control before the feed cut out.
This is interesting, though. New York Times, no proof Hamas routinely stole UN aid, Israeli military officials say. Like, this is internal. We were talking about this off stream last night. Like, this seems like internal conflict within like the secular side of the IDF versus like the religious forces in the country.
I mean, it is also because if you end up like, if you have reached the point where you're now at like Gazans, like there's no more food. There's no more food left in Gaza. There's no more ability for, you know, Gaza. Like you can't say that this, like Hamas is what's the problem in the food distribution anymore. And people are dying to know, literally dying to know, like, well, then what is it? What is going on? And what was wrong before that we had to upset this? Like eventually, yeah, the New York Times probably is going to be able to get a couple of people to say
it's not the New York Times. It's Israel that is saying.
No, but I'm
that.
saying
that's
like,
why I'm saying it's interesting.
But I'm saying that the New York Times is able to get, in this case, 4 on background quotes from Israeli officials who are communicating this. And they're evidently officials of such seniority or authority that that the New York Times is willing to, willing to run with it on their say-so. In direct contradiction with what the Wall Street Journal and other outlets reported last year, citing what else? On background Israeli government and military officials.
Dude, by the way, there is something so gross that, like, I'm not trying to be like Mr. Woke here, but there's something so openly supremacist about the New York Times refusing to ever cover the Palestinian perspective, or when they do, say it's a Hamas perspective, it's a terrorist perspective, and then only accepting the framework when it's Israel that says it.
Oh, like, yeah. Well, I mean, it's great. Like, do you think, I mean, it's like the...
Like every humanitarian aid organization, every single Palestinian and the rest of the planet, every single person that you meet on the street could recognize this reality, and the New York Times will not cover it until someone who's Israeli says it, okay? Only then is it the truth.
Who's fucking an Israeli?
Someone
that was
who's...
a joke.
Oh, okay.
I think the thing, to me, that's a piece of it, at least, is like what happened with the BBC, where they did this like huge investigative thing. They had a huge story, and then they pull it. They say, we're not running this, and it's because the subject, or it was released, but then they pull it after the fact, and it was this they pull it because, the person we profiled is like the child of an agricultural official in a Hamas-run government or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, the BBC has no problem whatsoever like using as sources or using as characters in a story the children of Israeli government officials, or
or directly Israeli government officials.
Exactly. Like this is a double standard thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like, can you imagine Abu Ubaidah like going on CNN to be like, what are you doing? Like, they're raping and pillaging our people. Like, of course we have to resist against them. Because that's the equivalent. And by the way, I'm not saying Abu Ubaidah is a scary figure here. I am stating that he is on the right side of this dynamic. Like, there is not even a moral equivalence between Abu Ubaidah and a random Israeli envoy like David Lammy or Jonathan Konkounkrius or whoever the goes on, Hagari, Rear Admiral General Hagari, going on CNN. Like, he's literally on the right side of this, okay? Members of the resistance against the Israeli genocide, prominent figures of the resistance against the Israeli genocide are on the morally correct side of this genocide. They are defending the victims, okay? That's it. Yeah, when is Abu Ubaidah going on the Nelk Boys podcast?
Dude, I want to see Steiny and Abu Ubaidah link.
Yeah, link up and build.
They need to.
He's probably a Zoomer. Like, there's no way I'm pretty sure he's like maximum like 27.
I mean, at this point, I'm not sure there are many people older enough left to take that job.
Yeah. He's probably got a decent understanding of I could talk to him about who his favorite content creators are. I'm sure he has opinions on it.
He had that line about, like, I mean, I still think one of the things that a lot of people, particularly in the media, discount is how well Palestinians and how well people in Gaza understand Israelis and Israeli culture. And one piece of that is, again, that, like, when, the Israelis announce a new operation that
they're saying he's 40. I don't believe it.
And they say that, like, Israel's launching Operation thing from the Bible. And, like, they're, again, they use the language. Ubaidah in that speech that was released recently talks about how people they're using the imagery and the rhetoric of the Bible to mask like their Nazi activities, using that word as well. And I find that to be like these people have they've got, the leadership has they understand what Israel's doing. And I think if the media were ever to bring them on in that kind of clear way, they wouldn't have like these scary people screaming in English like "death to the Jews" on CNN. They would be talking, and they would be expressing what they say already in Arabic and speaking to their own public, making the points about like the Israeli society, and that would be brain breaking for a lot of these people. The idea that like there is I mean, I know that it certainly is for people I know whom I talk with in my own life about this, that like actually no, these aren't like these people don't live and speak like a parody of how you think Muslim extremists all sound. Like they have like a pretty sophisticated understanding of what the moral rot looks like.
And ironically enough, the ones that do actually speak the way that you think all like Muslim resistance figures do are and have actually done the heinous crimes that you attribute to like Hamas are now running the Syrian government. Like, there are people like that out there.
That is true.
They're allies. They're America's allies. What are you talking about?
Or they're like that guy, the like thug who doesn't know how to read and write, who supposedly wrote a Wall Street Journal
Abu
op-ed.
Shabab is like the last education he had is like second grade. Okay, he is not literate, and apparently he wrote a column for the Wall Street Journal opinion. Abu Shabab dropped out of elementary school, can't read or write Arabic, let alone this fluent level of English. The Wall Street Journal allowed the IDF/Mossad to write an op-ed on behalf of an ISIS-linked gang leader and convicted drug dealer? The answer is yes.
And the answer is also that literacy is not a requirement to write for the Wall Street Journal opinion
page. This is the Israeli newspaper, I-24 News, saying an illiterate former thief with ties to ISIS in Sinai. Who are you? Yasser Abu Shabab. He was previously arrested for drug trafficking and escaped from prison when the fighting began. According to sources, he was an arms smuggler with ISIS in the Sinai. He founded an armed militia in coordination with Israel. It's crazy. It is crazy that like Israel has openly tapped this freak and his brigade. Hamas is still smoking those, by the way, in the Strip. And you have people going, oh, I don't know, man. It's just like Hamas is ISIS, right? Like, remember what Israel was saying? It's like, no, this guy's literally ISIS. Like, what are you talking about? And he's working with Israel. He can speak, right? What a dumb tweet. Yeah, he wrote the Wall Street Journal. He dictated the Wall Street Journal editorial.
He was doing editors.
Yeah. So ISIS is an Israeli co-creation after all. I mean, it's not an Israeli co-creation, but they are suspiciously always there working in unison with Israeli interests in the region.
Yeah, or like it's a like even if it's not a co-creation, even if it's not like, run by Israel or whatever, it's a classic case of it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, extrapolated to include literally ISIS.
Yeah, no.
Like Israel's attitude is that yes, we have to hand it to ISIS.
Always and consistently, whether it be in Syria or literally in the Gaza Strip. So what are we doing? Like, what are we talking about? The very figures that you could point to with these like stereotypical like jihadist Islamist attitudes or whatever are actually operating within the Gaza Strip. They're operating with Israeli arms. They're operating inside of Israeli red zones that they've designated, inside of Israeli headquarters that they've created in the Rafah area. It's ridiculous. And the reason why they were sent in as a scourge on the civilian population is to specifically destabilize aid distribution. Like, that's the reason why they started operating. Wait, so you're telling me the former ISIS members are now fighting on the side of Israel to kill Palestinians? This is breaking my brain a bit. It's so funny when there's always like, yes, the answer is yes. No, and it's not just that. I'm telling you that former ISIS members who are drug traffickers who were in prison, okay, were released most likely by Israel to directly create a formation known as the Popular Forces. Okay, that's what they're called. They have an AI image logo. They are literal open allies of Israel. Okay, and not only are they literal open allies of Israel, they write opinion pieces on the Wall Street Journal. Gazans are finished with Hamas. Which, Popular by the way, Forces, which is not even true.
Which also we should say, like more seriously, like how does this guy end up who doesn't read? Like Mohammed Shahad is exactly right. Like this is the IDF and the Mossad, which is or whichever, take your pick. But they are clearly in contact and working with the editors of the Wall Street Journal to be able to to sell this crock of shit. And that's where this is.
But like, who's reading this and going, "Wow"?
More okay. You say that, but like, there's probably people who read the Wall Street Journal opinion page and who are conservative and who like this is an opinion that people want to read. It doesn't matter that it's not true. It doesn't matter that it's like astroturfed by, in a very real sense. It doesn't matter that this isn't, that every single survey shows that even if Gazans who are critical of Hamas don't want it to lay down its arms because they understand that it's the last thing resembling protection from Israeli
sovereignty.
Exactly. It's all, they don't want to know that. What they want to see is that Gazans are finished with Hamas and that there's a guy waiting in the wings to take over and be our boy when Israel finally wins this war. Like, that's the lot. Like, there is an audience for that shit. And it, by the way, like, it's part of the effort by the IDF and the Mossad, not necessarily just to try and convince new people that there's, listen, like, you may have had sympathy with Hamas, but get a load of this. We have, there's actually other people in Gaza who want to take over. No. It's about also.
By the way, a Mossad agent wrote this because Gazans are finished with Hamas. Like, not even Palestinians. He can't even get himself to type Palestinians are finished with Hamas.
He's got to do the backspace on that one. No, but it's also about giving people who are in who have arguments from like the Zionist perspective, who are solidly on the side of Israel, to be able to point to and say, whoa, hold on. Look at this guy. Look at, it's about giving them another tool in the toolkit at a time when it's beginning to look pretty thin, when it doesn't seem like they actually have that many legs to stand on. And, if you know anything about anything, you know that this is as fake an article, as fake news as it comes or whatever. Yeah. But, to the undiscerning reader, which is surely most people who read the Wall Street Journal opinion section, this is another piece of rhetoric they can resort to. I'm sure grandfathers are sending this to woke children across the country.
Yeah, to own them in the marketplace of ideas, to be like, see, I told you this is bad. Even Palestinians don't want it. It's like, you know what Palestinians don't want? To be ethnically cleansed, okay? That's the number one priority that they have. It's not like you give a fuck about what Palestinians want. You're like, oh, they have disagreements with Hamas. They hate Hamas. It's like, that's the only time, it seems, you care about Palestinian sovereignty or Palestinian opinions. You don't give a when even the people that are protesting Hamas or whatever are like still primarily protesting Israel's genocide, blockade, and starvation policies. You don't give a fuck about that. You avoid that. You only bring it up when you're like, oh, but they hate Hamas. It's like, okay, I hate the Republican Party. Okay, I hate Donald Trump. That doesn't mean that I think millions of Americans should be ethnically cleansed and starved, okay? And it's obviously not even a comparison that we can imagine because there is no force as powerful. There is no way to showcase that power imbalance between Israel and the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip. There is no way that I can give you a decent analog because, like, even China doesn't do it. Right? Like even saying like, oh, what if China was like blockading America? It's just like, it's not. It has to be like an alien force.
Also, by the way, it's like a tactic that like we do. Like, it's a thing that, I mean, part of, I guess, what feels like so strange in this as well is that it's like there are examples of this in which we like try to actively restrict because a softer, more legalized version of this that we employ on countries around the world is our psycho global sanctions regime. Yeah. The Washington Post coverage led by Jeff Stein did a bunch of really good reporting on how we've created this decades old edifice of sanctions on governments all over the world that has in effect required many countries, extremely poor countries for the most part, to jerry-rig systems of food and aid.
69% of all of the 69% of the global South, I think, right? Like,
yeah, it's an insane, and they have to do all these. You have to go through these crazy hoops to be able to make sure they can supply basic means for this society to persist. Because the U.S. determined that, because of how we wield our sanctions weapon.
Yeah. Also, for those of you who talk about how anti-Semitic it is to make Holocaust comparisons, here is a Holocaust survivor making that exact same comparison, okay? Gabor Mate is a Holocaust survivor. He's a baby during the Holocaust, okay? Here's his own words on this issue.
The Jews were concentrated in this crowded area of Warsaw, and the Germans were deporting people. You know what the Germans did? They offered the Jews who were starving bread and jam to get on these trains and to ship them to their deaths. In Gaza, we've seen now for weeks upon weeks upon weeks, every day, people desperately lining up for food. and then being killed. And Israeli soldiers have described how they've been ordered to shoot on people lining up for food. People that were no threat to them whatsoever. People that weren't even close to them to pose any kind of a threat. People that were unarmed.
What? Tired of bringing Holocaust survivors as points? You find one who hates Zionism. I can probably find one who supports it. I don't know. Wait, what? What do you mean? Like, this is not for you, okay? That's not for you, weirdo. It's for the people who actually need to hear it from someone like Gabor Mate, someone like a Holocaust survivor, okay? That's it. It's just a way to beef up your argument from the optics front for those who need to hear it that way, okay? Because let's be real. If there's something that I do know from my experience of doing this kind of commentary for years at this point, there are a lot of people in America, no matter how white I am, that are going to hear that my name is Hasan, and they're just not going to listen to what I have to say. They're going to be like, nah, that's it. Just like I use the privilege that I have for good when I'm advocating for trans issues, for example, because I know that a transphobic person is not going to hear a trans person advocate for their own needs and their own desires and then take them seriously. There are plenty of people who hear that I am Muslim and go, maybe you're a little biased on this, don't you think? Maybe you're experiencing a little bit of Jew hate in your heart, maybe. Hasan, you know, that's it. My former podcast co-host being one of those people, literally. Of course, he doesn't listen to Jewish people either. He's completely lost his mind. But I think there was probably a point where if he would have listened to like a Sam Cedar type, he would have avoided all of this. He would have avoided nuking his entire career and being a rabid, racist, Islamophobic genocide denier.
And also, like, if the premise is that like it's anti-Semitic to make these comparisons, it's anti-Semitic to say this, to do that, then like moral onus on Jewish people who do not feel that way to say so. Because we're the ones that people do listen to about it. Yeah. It's not like, for sure. It's not, it feels like I know that people, there's a lot of people view it as like, oh, well, you're doing like identity politics. You're just doing, it's like, well, no, I'm responding to a world that demands that like identity be like the way that we express this and that it has that rhetorical power.
Optics work is so stupid to act like it doesn't work, especially in a place like America where Americans like literally, Americans don't even understand that like you can be Jewish and also anti-Semitic. Like they don't even comprehend that. So use that to your advantage. Just like right-wing racists will use Candace Owens, which is not a moral comparison that I'm making here, because obviously anti-Zionist Jews are on the right side of history. Candace Owens is on the wrong side of history as a black white supremacist. But like the totally calculated messaging analysis that I'm doing here implies that Americans do actually look at someone who is Jewish, who says, 10 toes down that these guys don't deserve to be slaughtered and that it's not in your name. And that opens up a permission structure for them to fully comprehend it. I've said this in advocacy for self-preservation for American Jews, that more and more Americans are responding to the anti-Semitic reasons as to why there is this like Jewish hypnosis blackmail operation that has caused Americans to turn a blind eye, American politicians to turn a blind eye to the actions of Israel. So it's getting to a point for a matter of self-preservation for American Jews to come out and openly say that this is not being done for Judaism, and that like people who are pro-Palestinian are not anti-Semitic.
Yeah, and also on top of it, that like, I mean, you raise it, but it's like anti-Semitism does exist, and like what's engendering it, right, is like the fact that there was that like the state committing a genocide right now puts a Magen David on its on its flag, and it just ends up being like it creates a like. It itself generates anti-Semitism, and thus the only response that I can think of, the only way I can think to resist that, is to like raise my hand and say, hey, I'm Jewish. I know a lot of other people who are Jewish, and anti-Semitism isn't being, generated by the people resisting this thing. It's the fact that like people are learning to associate the Star of David with starving children. I don't know how many more simple, how how much more simply I can express it.
Yeah. This is from r/Israel. I live in Europe. I'm terrified to tell anyone about my connection to Judaism or Israel or anything else. I went to the hospital because I've been dealing with PTSD from October 7. And after I said this to the intake nurse, they gave me a headscarf wearing doctor, which at this point I feel is either ignorant or on purpose. Like, dude, do you not see it? You're a Nazi, man. What do you mean? Oh my God, you had a doctor who's Muslim? Oh my God. What are you talking about? It's like saying, it's like being a Klansman and being like, I went into the hospital for PTSD due to being around black people. Okay. It was really traumatic for me. And then I told the doctor this, and then my doctor was a black man. Like, that's it. That's what this is. You're like a Klansman who's complaining that there is a Muslim doctor that was treating you.
What if it wasn't? I mean, what I'm imagining, of course, is that like it wasn't a Muslim doctor. Like it's like he's saying headscarf, and it was just a woman wearing like like a
Orthodox Jew. Exactly. Yeah, she was an Orthodox Jew that was wearing a headscarf. And
my God!
But he's a secular Jew.
Oh my God!
Who's just as racist, it seems. My rambling point is, for all the brilliance of Israel, first of all, no brilliance whatsoever, could it not somehow get better at PR or pro-Jewish propaganda or something? Could someone please help? Please help.
I'll give you the answer to that. No.
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 Yeah. It's
the best has already happened on that behalf.
Oh, yeah.
And let me back.
No.
There's no more Abba Eben. There's no more Paul Newman starring in Exodus. It's over. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like
it's also
new.
And it was also literally the people that carried it weren't like Israelis anyway. Like they weren't. It was like American Jews that did a pretty good job of doing marketing. Israelis do not do propaganda. They can't do it. They're too racist to do propaganda appropriately.
Listen,
they're too racist to make good content.
We try putting the Israeli on the TV, but there's problem. And the problem is that when the Israeli person opens their mouth, slurs come out. It's we've listen, Israel country, we're best in high tech, scientific research, medical research, and we've been examining, we've been studying why this is. Why when the Israeli open their mouth, the slur come out on TV. And we're working. We have scientists on it, and we are hoping that by 2027 we will have answer.
It's so bad. Is that why Sacha Baron Cohen is getting buff? Oh my God.
Sacha Baron Cohen's divorce arc is heating up.
He is, oh yeah. It's just, I don't want to even talk about that. Okay. For so many years, I tried to act as though it wasn't there because he did have, on accident sometimes, it seems, very good, sometimes anti-Israel propaganda, unironically. Like, who is America? Or was it what is America? Or who is America?
Yeah, what? No, the Iran Murad.
Yeah,
it's like this
Iran Murad is so perfect.
I wrote an article about it for Jewish Currents when it came out. It was like one of the funniest, most like biting and like correct satires of an Israeli that you'd ever seen, and it was the kind of thing that made me think like, oh wow, he's one of us. I was wrong.
No,
I was wrong.
I knew that he was on like. I knew that he was a part of like the Zionist theater troupe or whatever. Like after he went to clown school, like he literally did go to Israel and participate in that stuff. And then like some of the shit that he was doing was like obviously very Islamophobic as well. But yes, clown school, literally, that's a thing still, chatters. I'm a big Sacha Baron.
Clown is more difficult.
It's embarrassing to admit, but I used to be a big Sacha Baron Cohen fan, okay? And yes, he did go to clown school, and clown school is like a pretty difficult thing to go through. It sounds so stupid. It's not, it's like that's like a traditional a part of theater. It's clown college.
All right, I got to lunch.
All right.
I'll be back.
All right, perfect.
Later, chat.
Problematic? No, he's not even problematic. He's just like a major Israel dick rider. That's it. He's just a ginormous Israel dick rider, dude. That's what it is.
We can starve people, including children. That's what we're seeing now. You can't compare one-on-one. Gaza is not Auschwitz. But if you talk about human cruelty, lack of humanity, deliberate soul, the energy of it is the same. When I was an adolescent, when I found out about the Holocaust, and I thought, how could the world have let this happen? Well, I don't wonder anymore. The world is letting it happen right now in front of its own eyes. We all have this urge to find some positive resolution here. But you know what? I think we just have to keep telling the truth.
Yeah. What a way to ruin a nice message. How you can't compare Gaza to Auschwitz. I don't care, dude. Okay? Just calm down. Gabor Mate has always been a anti-Zionist. No, that chatter is upset because in that process he says you can't compare Gaza to Auschwitz, but like the energy is the same. The intention is the same. Okay? That's why someone is mad, because they're saying you can compare Gaza to Auschwitz. That's the only reason why that chatter is getting mad. It doesn't matter. It's not a one-to-one comparison. It's true. If you want to get like super specific, super deliberate, super literal about it, yes, it is not a one-to-one comparison, but it doesn't matter that it's not a one-to-one comparison, because that's not the only genocide. That's not the only bad thing, okay? Like Auschwitz and the Holocaust is not the only time something bad has ever happened. Anyway, let's get back to this.
Let's go live to our Middle East correspondent, Amir Nader, who's in Jerusalem.
Oh, shit. Breaking news. We have, since we did cover a lot of the stuff. There was one other thing that I wanted to say. Trump, of course, came out and hit the, why don't the Gaza's dead children say thank you?
President, should Israel be doing more to allow food into Gaza?
Say it.
Should Israel be doing more to allow food into Gaza?
What did you say?
Should Israel be doing more to allow food into Gaza?
Well, you know, we gave $60 million 2 weeks ago.
Which I thought it was 30. So they gave 60 to the GHF, apparently. This fucking dumbass leaked that it's actually twice the amount. And that's to the GHF, the murder machine that they set up in unison, in collaboration with Israel.
And nobody even acknowledged it for food. And it's terrible. You know, you really at least want to have somebody say thank you. No other country gave anything. We gave $60 million 2 weeks ago for food for Gaza. And nobody acknowledged it. Nobody talks about it. And it makes you feel a little bad when you do that, and you know you have other countries not giving anything. None of the European countries, by the way, gave. I mean, nobody gave but us, and nobody said, "Gee, thank you very much." And it would be nice to have at least a thank you. And I took a lot of heat. You know, when I do that.
Yeah. Did you even say thank you? Dying child in Gaza. Did you even think to say thank you to me for killing your parents? Come on now.
People aren't happy about that because they say, well, why are we doing it and nobody else? But I think we had a humanitarian reason for doing it. What's going to happen? I don't know. I can tell you that Hamas, as I said, would happen at the end. You know, we've gotten back a lot of hostages, a tremendous number of hostages, most of them. Now we have dead hostages, and the mothers want them back, and we have 20 people approximately. But that are living, but we have a lot of bodies, and the parents want those bodies as much as they would want their child if that child were alive. I met with parents it was so sad. Sir, please get my son back. How is your son doing? Well, he's dead, but they have his body, and it's so important. It's more important. It's almost like more, but it's as important as if the child were living. These people were. They're devastated. And I said, when you get it down to a certain number, you're not going to be able to make a deal with Hamas. Because once they give them up, then they feel that that's going to be the end of them. And what I said is exactly true. You know, they had a routine discussion the other day, and all of a sudden they hardened up. They don't want to give them back. And so Israel's going to have to make a decision.
Did you?
I know what I do, but I don't think it's appropriate that I say. But Israel's going to.
Dog, you literally said that you want to ethnically cleanse the Strip. What do you mean? Oh, you shouldn't say? You have said it. What more could Israel do that it hasn't done already?
Have to make a decision.
Just more of the thing that it's been doing.
President, when you were in the Middle East, you talked about the images coming out of Gaza and the starving kids. Those images are still going. Many of them are much worse. Thinner children, starving. What do you see or feel when you look at those images today?
Well, it's terrible. You know, when I see the children, and when I see, especially over the last couple of weeks, and people are stealing the food, they're stealing the money, they're stealing the money for the food. They're stealing weapons. They're stealing everything. It's a mess. That whole place is a mess. The Gaza Strip, you know, was given many years ago so that they could have peace. That didn't work out too well. When Israel gave that up, whoever